He raised his glass to her, not to me. We were in our backyard under garden lights, and the laughter from our closest circle ran easy. My name is Anna Reed, 52, and I am Mark's wife. It was our 20th anniversary, a night I planned and paid deposits for months ago, because that is what I do, hold things together. Friends filled the porch, and a slow cheer rolled across the tables. I noticed each champagne flute shining in the soft candlelight. For a second, everything looked whole. I set out the last plate and breathed. The roast came out right, the playlist stayed low, and the neighbor kids kept the gate closed. He had told me not to worry about the bill, but the caterer called me at noon for the remaining balance, so I covered it with our card. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself marriage is a long ledger, and some entries take time to balance. "Perfect night," he said, leaning in. "For us," I said. He checked his phone. The screen glow flashed across his face. I chose not to see it. By 8:30 p.m., the speeches began. Ruth clinked her glass and told a story about our first apartment and the rent we could barely meet. "You made it work," she said, looking at me. People smiled. I felt seen. I felt steady. I thought my work had meaning. Mark took the floor with an easy grin. "A toast," he said. He lifted his glass and the table quieted. "To the person who keeps me inspired, my muse." He turned his body, not toward me, but toward a woman at the far end of the table. She laughed, small and polished. His hand touched hers. My throat warmed like I'd swallowed a spark. "Did he say that?" someone whispered near me. "He did," I answered. I kept my face calm. My palms grew damp. I watched the woman's wrist catch the light as she tilted her glass. I knew her from town, a face at the gallery. I could not place the rest. He went on, "You make the world brighter." "Mark," I said, quiet. He didn't turn. The group stirred, chairs sliding an inch. I heard a single fork clatter. I took a breath and counted, the way I do when bills stack and the month runs long. 1, 2, 3. Then I smiled. "Lovely words," I said. My voice did not shake. "Thank you, everyone, for coming." Ruth brushed my arm. "I'm here," she murmured. The woman met my eyes across the table and looked away as if the air were heavy. Someone near me lifted a phone and took a picture, the flash quick and white, the kind you feel more than see. I knew that image would live longer than this night. His raised glass angled toward her, my face turned to stone. He walked by me for another bottle. "Don't make a scene," he said. "I won't," I said. "Be gracious, Anna," he said, soft enough to pass as charm. "It's good for us." "It costs me," I said. He smiled tight. "You worry too much." I set the cake knife down. My mind flipped through our accounts, grocery runs, the roof repair, the little transfers he made for work dinners. I thought of the trip we said we'd take this fall, and the savings I guarded like it was breath. I felt something inside me change shape. I carried plates to the kitchen. Ruth followed and held the stack when my grip slipped. "Say the word," she said. "I'll clear people out." "Not yet," I said. "Let them finish." A guest paused at the door. "Anna," she whispered, eyes damp. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come." Her apology fell between us like a folded note. She left through the side gate. I rinsed a plate to keep my hands busy. He came in behind me, voice low. "You'll thank me later," he said. "For what?" I asked. "For letting everyone see the real me." "The bill saw the real me at noon," I said. He laughed. "Always about money." "It's about respect," I said, and felt the room tilt back toward level. He leaned closer. "Don't start." I stepped away. "I won't start. I will finish." Ruth opened the door a crack. "Guests are heading out. Do you want me to stay?" "Please," I said. We returned to the yard. The last toasts faded. I moved through the group, hugging people, collecting quick goodbyes. Someone slipped me a napkin with a phone number, then pulled back, embarrassed. I tucked it into my pocket as if it were a receipt I would later need. On the table, the bottle sweated into a ring. The cake stood untouched. He wrapped an arm around the woman's shoulders as if it were nothing and everything. My belly went cold, then steady. There is a moment when shame burns off and leaves a different fuel. "Leave her," Ruth whispered. "Not tonight," I said. "Tonight, I remember." I walked up to the couple and set down 2 forks. "Try the cake," I said. My voice felt clear. "It's paid for." He blinked. The woman took a step back. 3 short lines fell out of me, clean and sharp. "Enjoy the toast. Enjoy the sugar. Enjoy the bill." He opened his mouth, closed it, then looked around to gauge the room. Chairs scraped again. People avoided my eyes. Silence spread like a tablecloth. Stakes are simple. My home, my name, our accounts, our years. I will not lose them in a single sentence dressed as a compliment. A phone flashed again, then lowered. My breath evened. I knew I would keep that photo, not to post or to plead, but to mark the start line. By 10 p.m., the last cars pulled away. The yard emptied. The wind hit the candles and left small curls of smoke. I went back to the table and gathered the glasses, careful not to chip the rim of any champagne flute. His laughter drifted from the porch with hers trailing behind like a ribbon that never belonged to me. She smiled at him like I used to. Her scent was on his shirt again. It was a weekday morning just past 7. The sun slid through the kitchen window, hitting the sink in a soft stripe, the smell of tea mixed with detergent and steam from the iron. For a moment, it felt like every other morning we'd ever shared. Routine, quiet, safe. Then the scent hit me. Not mine, not detergent. Something floral, expensive, too deliberate. My chest tightened. He came in tying his tie, pretending not to notice me holding his shirt. "You're up early," he said, cheerful. "I couldn't sleep," I answered. "You wore this yesterday?" He shrugged. "Maybe." "Why?" I held it closer. "It smells different." He laughed, the kind that shuts you down. "You're imagining things again, Anna." The word again stung. I folded the shirt and placed it on the chair. "I'm not imagining what's right in front of me." He stepped closer, voice low. "You worry too much. It's perfume from the office. Someone hugged me." I stared at him. Someone always does. He kissed the top of my head and walked away, leaving the faint trace of her scent behind. My tea had gone cold. By 8:30 he was gone. I opened his drawer to grab socks to wash and found a crumpled slip of paper, thin, glossy, with a hotel logo printed at the top. The date was 2 days ago. "Brunch for 2. My stomach flipped. It wasn't proof, not yet, but it was something I couldn't unsee. Ruth came by to return a casserole dish. She glanced at me and said softly, "I think I saw him near the Harbor Hotel on Sunday." She paused. He wasn't alone. Her eyes said she didn't want to tell me more. I thanked her and changed the subject, but the words stayed. At lunchtime, I drove to the store for groceries, swiping my card and watching the total climb. Each item felt heavier than it should: bread, milk, detergent. When the receipt printed, I folded it next to his, 2 thin records of 2 different truths. That evening, he came home late. I heard his car door slam at 9. I was in the kitchen pretending to read the mail. "Long day?" I asked. "Traffic," he said. I handed him the folded receipt. "From the hotel." He looked at it, smiled, and placed it on the counter. "You went through my pockets?" "I did the laundry." "You don't trust me." "You keep making it hard." He stepped forward. "You're turning small things into stories." "Maybe they're already stories," I said quietly. He laughed again, but there was a warning in it. "You're lucky to have what we have. Don't ruin it." "Lucky?" The word burned in my throat. "I built what we have." He leaned in, eyes steady. "Then stop tearing it down." He walked out, leaving his jacket on the chair. The perfume lingered. I picked it up, held it to my nose, and for a moment felt dizzy with memory. Our first years, the nights we counted coins for rent, the promises that felt unbreakable. Now, every promise smelled like someone else. At 10, I sat on the porch. The garden gate creaked as the wind pushed it open, then closed again with a tired click. The neighborhood lights flickered through the trees. Somewhere, laughter floated from another house, clean and harmless. I used to know that sound. I folded my hands and told myself to breathe. Suspicion was a slow poison, but denial was quicker. I thought of the money missing from our last joint payment, the odd gap he called a billing error. Every lie, no matter how small, had a cost. I was beginning to keep score. When he finally came to bed, he was already half asleep. I lay still, eyes open to the dark. The room smelled faintly of her again. His breath was even, careless. Then, between the rhythm of exhale and inhale, I heard it, soft, low, unguarded. He whispered her name in his sleep. I met her before I knew who she was. It started on a Tuesday morning when the flyer arrived in my mailbox. Community Art Workshop, it read, hosted at the local gallery downtown. I needed something to do with my hands, something to fill the quiet hours when Mark was working late. The entry fee was modest, and I convinced myself it was time to try. By 10 the next morning, I was in a room that smelled faintly of paint and linseed oil, surrounded by women who talked about color as if it could save them. That's where I saw her, Claire. Her hair was neat, her laugh light, and when she turned, I recognized her from that night, the woman at the party. I froze, brush halfway lifted. She caught my eye and smiled as if we were old friends. "You must be new," she said. "I am," I answered, careful. "You're with this group often?" "Every week," she said. "It's the only place I can breathe." I nodded. I know that feeling. Her charm came easy, the kind that seemed polished by practice. We painted side by side, sharing a palette. She complimented every stroke I made, even the messy ones. When she laughed, others followed. She had a way of pulling people in, as though warmth were a tool she used. Over the next few sessions, we talked. She asked where I lived, what I did, how long I'd been married. I gave small answers, nothing sharp enough to draw blood. Then she mentioned him, casually, like the name had no weight. "I met someone," she said. "Brilliant, driven, just misunderstood." I looked at her painting. Bold lines, dark eyes. My stomach dropped. "What's his name?" "Mark," she said with a soft smile, dipping her brush. "He's teaching me to see people differently." I managed a nod. "That's important." She kept talking, unaware that every word was an arrow. "He says his wife doesn't get it. She doesn't really see him. Some people grow cold in marriage, you know?" That sentence cut straight through me. I kept my hand steady on the canvas, though my chest was tight. "Maybe she does," I said. "Maybe she just doesn't say it." Claire tilted her head. "You sound like you've been married a long time." "Long enough," I said. At lunch, I slipped away to the small gallery connected to the workshop. The walls were lined with paintings from local artists. On the far end, I saw hers, signed in soft cursive, for M. The same silver bracelet she wore at the party gleamed on her wrist in the artist's photograph. My knees weakened. I stepped closer, pretending to study the brushwork, but the truth stared back. She had painted my husband's face. I ran my fingers along the edge of the frame, the texture of the dried paint uneven beneath my skin. Proof didn't always come as documents or numbers. Sometimes it was color and shadow, a confession hidden in plain sight. The gallery attendant noticed me staring. "That one's new," she said. "Dedicated to someone special, I think. Sold quickly, too." I forced a smile. I'm sure it did. By the time I reached my car, the late afternoon sun bounced off the windshield, blinding me. I sat for a long minute, gripping the steering wheel. My hands smelled faintly of turpentine. My pulse thudded in my throat, the same rhythm I felt the night of that toast. I looked at my wedding ring and wondered how long I'd been a stranger in my own life. That night, I didn't confront him. Instead, I placed the workshop invitation and a photo of the painting side by side on the kitchen counter. I needed to see them together, to prove this wasn't imagination. He came home around 9, humming to himself, carrying takeout I didn't ask for. "Rough day?" he said. "Productive," I replied. He looked at the papers, unreadable. "What's this?" "Art," I said. "People say painting helps with clarity." He smiled like it was nothing. "Whatever keeps you busy." Then he walked past me, heading upstairs. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the hall. My hands trembled, but my mind was calm for the first time in weeks. I knew now who she was, what she meant, and what I needed to do next. As I cleaned the kitchen, my eyes caught on the silver light of the moon hitting the window glass. It shimmered like her bracelet, the kind of shine that hides its own shadow. I dried my hands on a towel and whispered to no one, "You painted my husband's face." Our savings had vanished without warning. At the bank counter, paper slid from a printer with a quick hiss. The sound cut through my chest like a warning bell and left the air too thin to breathe. The clerk, a young man with careful eyes, handed me a bank envelope with the printout tucked inside. I opened it and felt the floor tilt. The balance that once meant safety looked hollow, like a shell you pick up and put down because it's already broken. "I don't understand," I said. "These withdrawals weren't authorized." He scanned the lines. "These transfers were set as recurring every other Friday. Do you share online access?" "We did. Not anymore." I steadied my hands on the counter. "How much is left?" "Not much," he said, voice low. "I'm sorry." The envelope felt heavy. "Can you print the dates?" "Of course." He printed again and stapled the pages. "Do you want to adjust permissions on the account? We can require your approval for any movement." "Yes," I said. "Remove his access. Lock it to my authorization only." He nodded. "I'll need your ID." I slid over my card and signed the forms. I watched him work, and for a moment, I felt protected by simple rules done in simple steps. The clerk glanced up. "Do you have support? Someone to talk to?" "I'll be fine," I said, but my voice thinned. I pressed my wedding ring against the paper to keep it steady. The ring left a small indentation on the page like a stamp I hadn't meant to make. Back in the car, I read every line again. Each date matched one of his work trips, hotel weekends, long dinners, gas station stops far from home. The money tracked his choices with perfect honesty. I drove home slow, hands tight on the wheel, and parked under the maple tree that always drops leaves too early. He was in the kitchen, opening mail. "You've been out," he said. "At the bank," I answered. "Our savings are gone." He smiled without warmth. "You worry about numbers too much." I spread the statement on the table. "This is not worry. This is theft." He looked at the page and shrugged. "Household costs. You buy things. It adds up. Show me one charge for me that matches this total." "You're being dramatic." "Show me," I said. He set the mail down. "You're paranoid." 3 small lines left my mouth before I could stop them. "Stop calling me that." "Look at the dates. Look at the totals." He rolled his eyes. "I make money. I spend money. It's all ours." "It was ours," I said. "Now it's mine to protect." His jaw ticked. "What does that mean?" "I changed the permissions," I said. "No transfer goes through without me." He stepped closer. "Undo it." "No." "Undo it now." "No," I said again, steady. "This is my boundary." He laughed, but I saw the tremor. "You like rules? Here's one. You can cover groceries on your own card this month. We'll see how far your pride gets you." "My pride?" I lifted the envelope. "This is about food, mortgage, heat. I won't let you drain what keeps me safe." He grabbed his keys. "You'll come crawling by Friday." "I keep records now," I said. "Everything." Before bed, I called Ruth and read her the dates. She listened, then said, "Write it all down. Keep copies. If he fights, you'll need proof." I thanked her and tucked the statement into the bank envelope, then into the drawer where we keep warranties and passports, the things you only grab in an emergency. At midnight, I tried the grocery card for an online order. Declined. I tried again. Declined. My stomach dropped. He had moved faster than I planned, and my screen flashed a message that felt like a shove. I checked our other card. Also declined. I opened the bank portal to reset the password and found the page locked behind a new challenge question I had never created. The house was quiet, and the clock in the hall ticked like it was counting me down. I closed the laptop and laid my hand on the ring again, letting the metal cool my skin. In the morning, I would call the bank and restore the block, add new questions, move what was left. I would take cash if I had to, and keep it in the small fireproof box in the closet next to the tax folders. I would not be cornered in my own kitchen by a man who treated our life like an open tab. He changed every password before morning. He started locking the gate at night. At first, he said it was for safety. "You worry too much," he told me. "Anyone could walk in from the street." The words sounded reasonable, but his tone was off. By then, small things had already begun to shift. The way he checked the mail before I could, the way he handled every bill like it was a secret. The porch light flickered when he tested the timer, and I wondered if even that was meant to unsettle me. The first time I reached for the garden key, it was gone. "You must have misplaced it," he said. His smile was soft, but the corners of his eyes stayed flat. I searched every drawer, every bowl by the door. Nothing. When I asked again, he raised his voice. "If you didn't lose things, I wouldn't have to keep track." He said it like he was doing me a favor. By evening, I couldn't shake the sound of the latch closing. I stood at the kitchen window, watching the fence shimmer in the porch light. I could hear it when the metal met the frame, a dull, final click. I told myself I was imagining it, but every night it locked tighter. 2 days later, I tried the front path for air. He blocked the doorway. "You're not going anywhere until you calm down." I wasn't angry. I was afraid. "Mark, I just want to walk." He leaned closer. "You make scenes. I won't have the neighbors gossiping again." That same night, a patrol car pulled up outside just after 9. A young officer stood on the porch, hat in hand. "We got a call about a disturbance," he said. I stared at him, speechless. Mark stood behind me, arms folded. "My wife gets emotional," he said, smiling at the officer like an old friend. "She's under stress." The humiliation hit harder than his words. The officer's polite smile slipped as he looked at me. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" I forced a nod. "Everything's fine." After they left, I sat at the kitchen table. "You called the police?" I asked. "I had to," he said. "You were yelling." I hadn't yelled. I hadn't even spoken. He twisted the truth until it fit his story like a glove. "You should thank me," he said. "Now they know who to believe if things get bad." "Bad?" I said. "You mean if I stop pretending?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you keep acting crazy." I stared at the ring on my hand, the faint shadow it left when I pulled it off. I put it down next to the unpaid electric bill and said, "Stop talking to me like I'm a child." He shrugged. "Then stop acting like one." I called my sister Megan later that night. The words came out uneven. "He locked me in." There was a pause on the line. "That's not love," she said. "That's control. You need to leave." I told her I wasn't ready. "Then start preparing," she said. "Start collecting truth." When the house grew quiet, I stood by the window again. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. I heard the gate latch slide into place, metal over metal. The sound stayed in my chest like a heartbeat I didn't own. Fear turned into a checklist: dates, receipts, statements, copies. Every word he spoke, every call he made, I would keep. The officer's note still sat on the counter, the words "domestic concern" written neatly in the margin. Proof disguised as politeness. By the next morning, I'd hidden a small notebook under the cushion of the dining chair. Each night, I wrote what he said, what I saw, what I felt. It wasn't enough yet, but it was a start. A ledger of truth, built one line at a time. The wind moved through the yard, brushing the fence, but the gate stayed shut. I pressed my hand to the glass, knowing I'd have to push back soon, knowing he'd feel it when I did. The lock clicked again behind me. He didn't know I kept the recorder on. It was just after 8 when the house went still. The coffee pot clicked, the kind of small sound that fills the silence after a fight. He had left the kitchen to take a call, his voice carrying through the hall. Confident, charming, the version of him everyone else believed. I picked up my phone from the counter and slid my thumb across the screen. The red light blinked on. Recording. He came back 10 minutes later, still on edge. "You always twist things," he said, pacing. "I'm the one trying to keep this family standing." I kept my tone calm. "I just asked where you were last night." He smirked. "At work, obviously. You're paranoid again." He took my mug, drank from it, and set it down without meeting my eyes. I watched the steam fade. "You wouldn't last a week without me," he said. "Not with what's left in your account." Those words landed hard. He didn't know I had the bank statements locked in my desk. He didn't know I was learning to keep evidence. I let him talk until his voice turned to noise, then ended the recording. My hand trembled. Listening to it later, I hated the sound of my silence. My quiet made him confident. That night, I promised myself I'd collect truth like currency. The next morning, I transferred the file to a small drive and hid it in the sugar tin. Proof had to live somewhere safe, even among ordinary things. I reached out online and found a local advocacy group for women dealing with emotional control. They met in the basement of the old community hall. I almost didn't go, but I did. A volunteer named Julia sat with me after the meeting. She was younger than I expected, direct but kind. "Keep copies," she said, "never just one. Back them up where he can't touch them." I nodded, clutching my bag. "And don't confront him yet. Truth works best when it's quiet until it's ready." Her words stuck with me. Quiet until it's ready. By afternoon, I recorded again. He was in the living room, ranting about bills. "You're careless," he said. "You spend like money grows on trees." I didn't remind him who emptied the savings. I let him rant, his words dripping through the room like acid. Every insult, every cruel laugh, it was all captured. When I replayed it later, I heard something else behind his voice. Fear. His power depended on my silence. Proof was breaking it, inch by inch. One evening, I left the recorder running when he didn't expect it. He started talking to someone on the phone, and I caught pieces of his lies. "She's losing it," he told them. "If she keeps pushing, I'll make sure she has nothing left." I stopped breathing for a moment. Then he laughed, a sound that felt like it didn't belong to a person I once loved. That night, I listened to the playback 3 times. The clock read 11:47 when I whispered to myself, "He said it out loud. Finally." My reflection in the dark window looked older, but stronger too. I uploaded the audio to a cloud account Julia helped me set up. For the first time in years, I felt ahead of him. He noticed the change before he knew why. The next morning, he stared at me across the breakfast table. "You're quiet," he said. "Planning something?" I smiled faintly. "Just thinking." His jaw tightened. "I don't like secrets." "Neither do I," I said. That was the first time I watched him doubt himself. Days later, I forgot to clear the files from the phone before leaving it on the counter. He walked in from the garage, hands still dusty. "What's this?" he asked, picking it up. My stomach twisted. "Just notes," I said. He tapped the screen, and the playback began. His own voice filled the room, sharp, mocking. For a few seconds he didn't move. Then he looked up, eyes narrow. "You recorded me." I kept my voice steady. "You said things I needed to remember." He stepped closer. "You think this will save you?" "It already has," I said. His face changed, slowly, darkly. "Delete it now." "No." His hand twitched like he might grab the phone, but he didn't. He turned away, muttering, "You'll regret this." When he left the room, the air felt heavier, but I didn't flinch. I knew what I had, proof stronger than his temper, louder than his lies. I slipped the phone into my pocket and walked toward the window, the red light still faintly blinking against my hand. He found one of the recordings. He said I'd regret going public. The letter came on a bright afternoon, slid under the door with an envelope seal like a stamp on my throat. I held it to the light and read the first line. A law office name, a warning, a tone that tried to turn fear into order. I tore it open, and the paper rasped under my fingers. One sound, dry and sharp, set my teeth on edge, hard. "Defamation," it said. "Cease and desist." I wasn't even speaking yet. I was gathering proof, filing copies, saving dates. The letter listed penalties and hinted at costs, his retainer, their hourly rate, what it would take to make me quiet. I imagined the bill landing hard every month. Money had become his shield, and my silence was the price he wanted. He came home at 3 p.m., found me at the table. "You got mail?" he asked. "A warning," I said. He smiled. "Good. Maybe you'll think twice." "I am thinking," I said, "just not the way you hope." He leaned over the letter, tracing the letterhead like it belonged to him. "These people don't play." "I don't either," he chuckled. "You can't afford this fight? I can't afford the lie." He stepped back and grabbed a mug from the sink. It slipped, hit the counter, and cracked. The handle snapped. The broken mug lay between us like a forecast. The phone rang after dark. His voice poured through the line, low and hot. "You'll ruin yourself before you ruin me." "You already did the ruining," I said. "You like to record things? Record this. Back off. Delete whatever you have. Last chance." "No," I said. "Not anymore." He hung up. I saved the voicemail, labeled it with the date, and sent a copy to a new email he couldn't guess. I took photos of the envelope, the seal, the crack in the mug. Evidence was not only numbers. It was the trail a bully leaves while he thinks no one is watching. The next morning, I walked into a small law office and asked for a consult I could afford. The receptionist glanced at the letter, and her mouth tightened. "They send these to scare," she said. "It works if you let it." The fee was $100 for 30 minutes. I paid cash. The attorney read fast, then looked at me. "Do not reply directly. Keep your records. If he escalates, we involve the court." I left and drove to the station. A young officer, the one who'd been kind before, met me in the lobby. He listened as I played the voicemail. "Keep that," he said. "We can't file charges for this unless he crosses a line, but the pattern matters. Build the pattern." On the way home, I stopped for groceries and bought what I needed. Bread, eggs, a small bag of rice. I counted bills twice, so I wouldn't swipe a card he could block. Outside, the wind pushed at the trees. They bent and snapped back. I drove slow and told myself I would bend and snap back too. By evening, my phone lit up with numbers I didn't know. I let them ring out. A text arrived from a blocked ID. "Think about the cost." I did. Court fees, moving money, a retainer of $1,500 if I had to hire counsel. I pictured the fireproof box in the closet and felt calmer. If safety has a price, I would find it. He came in late, eyes bright with anger. "Answer me when I call." "No. You're making a mistake." "Maybe," I said, "but it's mine to make." He leaned close, breath sour. "This ends now." "It doesn't," I said. "It starts." 3 short lines, flat and clear. "Stop threatening me. Stop lying. Stop calling." He stared, then laughed once. "You want public? Fine." He filed for separation before I could. The papers arrived in a plain envelope. No return address, just my name typed in bold black letters. The paper inside was heavy, official, the kind that means something you can't undo. I ran my thumb along the edge and felt the ridge of a court stamp. It smelled faintly of ink and dust, the scent of bureaucracy and consequence. His lawyer had filed for separation. The reason printed at the top, financial mismanagement. I almost laughed. He had drained our accounts, locked me out, moved cash under his name, and now he wanted the record to show I was the careless one. Control, even in paperwork. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where we once planned vacations, and thought about how betrayal becomes strategy once it's written in legal language. That week, I met with my legal aid counselor, a woman named Evelyn. She wore no pretense, just calm logic and quiet fire. "He's trying to establish a narrative," she said, flipping through the pages. "But these filings show patterns we can challenge. Have you kept all your bank copies?" "Yes," I said. "Every page." She smiled faintly. "Good. Let's start there. We built a folder thicker than the one he'd sent. Evelyn found discrepancies, transfers tied to new accounts in his name only. She looked up from her screen. "This," she said, tapping one line, "goes offshore. Same day he told the court you overspent on utilities." The words settled in like a bruise I'd expected but hadn't seen. "How much?" I asked. "Enough to matter," she said. "Enough for leverage." That night, I reread everything by lamplight. My hand hovered over a fountain pen he'd once given me for our anniversary, engraved with his initials. I used it now to sign the Declaration of Evidence. Each stroke of ink felt like reclaiming oxygen. I kept thinking how truth doesn't roar. It builds, letter by letter, until the paper itself starts to weigh more. The court date came 2 weeks later. I sat behind my lawyer, spine straight, while he took the stand. His voice was smooth, confident, but his hands betrayed him. Tight fists when he thought no one was watching. The judge asked simple questions. "When were these transfers made?" His lawyer hesitated. Mark's answer stumbled. "It was for business purposes," he said, eyes flicking toward me. "Joint projects." Evelyn stood, papers in hand. "We have documentation showing the funds moved into a personal account," she said. "No shared authorization." The courtroom air shifted. I felt it in my skin, a quiet tilt. The judge's gaze moved between us. "We'll order a review," he said. "Both accounts. Both parties." His gavel hit once, clean and final. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was movement. Outside the courthouse, I exhaled for the first time that morning. The sky looked gray, but open. Evelyn handed me a copy of the order. "Keep this," she said. "It's proof the system's paying attention." I folded it carefully, the paper warm from her hands. At home, I placed the document inside a new envelope and sealed it. The same table, the same pen. The balance had shifted. Not fully, but enough that I could feel gravity working for me again. I brewed coffee and watched it swirl in the cup. Power didn't come in bursts anymore. It came in signatures, filings, evidence stacked in quiet rows. It was after 9 when I finally turned off the lamp. The house seemed too still. I stepped outside for air, the night pressing close. The gate creaked faintly behind me, and I turned. A car idled down the street, its engine low, headlights dimmed. My breath caught. When I walked toward the porch, I heard gravel shift. He followed me home that night. They came with flashlights just after dawn. The first beam cut across the living room wall, thin and steady. I stood by the staircase, barefoot, gripping the banister. The air was cold enough to sting my throat. One officer nodded politely before stepping inside. "We have a warrant," he said. "Financial misconduct investigation." His voice was calm, almost careful, as if he knew the sound of it would stay in this house for years. They moved through the rooms, opening drawers, sliding folders into boxes. Each box had a label: accounts, assets, personal. I watched one officer lift the lid of a storage crate and pull out a folder with our old mortgage documents. The paper rustled like dry leaves. I hadn't heard that sound in months. It made everything real. Mark wasn't home. He'd left early the night before after another argument about the court review. I'd stopped answering his calls. Now his absence felt like safety and accusation at once. One officer paused at the study door. "We'll need to access this computer," he said. "Is there a password?" I shook my head. He never shared it. The man nodded, then looked at me gently. "We'll get authorization." I stepped outside while they worked. The morning light spread thin over the yard, still pale from dawn. Across the street, neighbors stood in their driveways pretending to water lawns, pretending not to stare. One of them, Mr. Carter, gave me a small nod. I couldn't tell if it meant support or curiosity. By then, I knew both came in the same shape. At 7:10, a black car pulled up. 2 more officers climbed out and carried another empty box. I could see the label before they filled it. Accounts. I thought of all the nights I'd begged him to explain missing deposits, the way he'd sneered and said, "You wouldn't understand." Now someone else was asking the questions I couldn't. Watching that box disappear down the path, I felt something strange. Not victory, just balance, long delayed. By noon, it was everywhere. A headline flashing on my phone: "Local businessman under financial investigation." A grainy picture of our house sat under it. Then came the next one: "Sources close to the case confirm allegations from spouse." My hand shook as I scrolled. There it was. My name, blurred but clear enough. The private had become public. The phone rang again. His voice, low and breaking. "You did this." I stayed silent. "Do you know what you've done?" he said. "You've destroyed us." I said nothing again. The pause stretched until I heard him breathe hard through his nose. "You think they'll believe you? You think they'll see me as the monster?" Then the line went dead. I leaned against the counter and tried to breathe. It wasn't triumph. It was gravity shifting under my feet. Every choice had a cost, and I could feel the bill coming due. But fear didn't feel the same anymore. It didn't rule me. It just reminded me what mattered. By evening, the street was quiet. The officers were gone. The house looked smaller with the shelves half empty, the drawers left open. I found a thin layer of dust where the computer used to sit. In its place, a faint square of lighter wood, proof that truth takes space when it arrives. I closed the door and locked it, one small act of ownership. Later, as the sun sank, I turned on the TV. A reporter stood outside the courthouse, microphone in hand. "Investigators removed multiple boxes labeled 'accounts from the residence,'" she said. "Sources indicate the material may confirm claims of concealed assets filed in court last month." Her voice was smooth, professional. Then she looked into the camera, eyes steady. "The spouse, identified as—" She paused for a fraction of a second. The news anchor said my name, aloud. They aired the story during dinner hour. I was alone at the table, a bowl of stew going cold. The TV glow filled the room, blue and steady. I took a spoonful and tasted nothing. The flavor had drained out of the day. The chair across from me sat pulled back, like a question no one would answer. Then the anchor spoke his name, and mine, simple as weather. The clip rolled. Documents slid across the screen, bank statements, a court order, a still frame of a label that read accounts. My handwriting flashed for a second on a declaration page. The reporter's voice stayed calm while the timeline stacked itself month by month, transfer by transfer, a 3-minute summary of years. Truth compressed until it clicked. "Sources confirm recorded audio of controlling behavior," she said. They played my voice, thin but steady, followed by his, sharp enough to leave a mark. I felt heat crawl up my neck. The proof did not care that I was shaking. Proof never does. It just sits there, plain, and forces the room to choose. My phone lit up. Unknown number. I let it ring twice, then answered. "What have you done?" he said, breathless. I told the truth. "You think this makes you noble? It makes me free. You'll starve on that freedom." I looked at the bowl. "I've been starving." He exhaled hard. "Pull this back. Call them. Tell them you exaggerated." "No. You owe me. I owe myself." Silence edged in. Then he spat. "You will lose everything." "Not everything," I said. He tried a new angle. "Think of the cost." "I have," I said. "Every bill had your name on it." He hung up. The phone buzzed again with messages from numbers I didn't know. Some were kind. Some tore me open. A woman wrote, "I believe you." Another wrote, "You ruined a good man." Kindness and cruelty sat side by side like salt and sugar in the same cabinet. The station cut to the public forum, town hall night, folding chairs, a roaming mic. I hadn't planned to go, but I went. The room hummed with a restlessness that made words arrive sharper. The TV screen behind the moderator froze on the court stamp. People turned when I walked in. I kept my eyes on the nearest empty seat, a dining chair borrowed from some church basement, wood worn smooth by years of use. The moderator asked, "Do financial secrets belong in private, or is exposure a public good?" A man near the aisle said, "It's dirty laundry. Keep it at home." A woman stood up 2 rows back. "I watched that report," she said. "If the system is slow, sometimes public light speeds it up." Heads nodded. Others frowned. A teen near the wall whispered, "That's her," like I was a headline instead of a body. I raised my hand. The mic reached me, heavy and warm. "I didn't want this," I said. "I wanted fairness. I wanted to stop waking up to overdrafts and lies. If that's public now, it's because private didn't work." My voice didn't shake. I felt it land. From the back, a voice cut in. "Why didn't you leave sooner?" I breathed once, then twice. Because leaving costs money. Because I didn't have access. Because fear looks like math when you can't buy a lock for your own door. A murmur rolled through the room, the kind that says a truth has been named. After, 3 people pressed notes into my hand. One offered a spare bed for a week. Another offered a part-time job filing at a clinic. The third pressed a 20 into my palm and whispered, "For groceries." I tried to hand it back. "Please," she said, "let me do one right thing today." I kept it because dignity sometimes looks like saying yes. When I stepped out, the night air felt clean. My phone buzzed again. A new email, the subject line in all caps. My stomach dropped before I opened it. The body was short, mean, and precise. A demand, a timeline, a threat dressed in legal phrasing. At the bottom, a signature from his attorney, neat as a blade. His lawyer demanded a public retraction. We faced each other under courtroom lights. The air was dry, the kind that clings to your throat and turns every word into effort. The clerk adjusted her papers. The judge glanced down at the folder in front of him. My lawyer leaned close and whispered, "Breathe." I nodded, eyes fixed on the stack of documents we'd built piece by piece. Bank proofs, transfers, the affidavit signed in blue ink. The texture of the paper felt rough under my fingertips, like it had absorbed every sleepless night that made it exist. He was already there when I looked up. Gray suit, polished shoes, the same charm that used to work on everyone but no one today. For the first time, he didn't meet my eyes. That was its own kind of confession. The judge called the case. "State your name," he said. My voice came out steady. "Do you understand the allegations?" he asked him. Mark nodded once. "Yes, Your Honor." Then silence. Just the faint tick of a clock somewhere behind us. It might have been 10, maybe later. I'd stopped counting hours weeks ago. My lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we're submitting proof of concealed assets totaling over $75,000, accompanied by an affidavit signed and verified under oath." She placed the folder on the desk. The click of her pen echoed. The gavel didn't move yet, but it might as well have. Everyone could feel what was coming. His lawyer cleared his throat. These transfers were temporary. There was no intent to defraud. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Temporary?" he repeated. "Into accounts she couldn't access?" The words cut through the air clean and sharp. Mark started to speak but stopped halfway. His jaw tightened. His hands fidgeted with a piece of paper that didn't need him anymore. When it was my turn, I stood. "I'm not here to win," I said. "I'm here to live without lies." I told them about the frozen cards, the nights counting bills, the gate he locked. I didn't cry. I spoke like someone who'd run out of places to hide. Every word felt like lifting a brick off my chest. The judge looked at me for a long time, then down at the affidavit again. "The record is clear," he said. "Funds will be restored, and protective orders will stand." One sentence, months of pain folded into law. The gavel came down once. The sound wasn't loud, but it filled the room. I exhaled. My lawyer touched my shoulder lightly, and for the first time, my body didn't tense at contact. He looked smaller then, not in size, but in weight, his face pale, the confidence gone. The crowd outside waited for something, comment, emotion, anything. But I didn't give it. Justice doesn't need to announce itself. It just settles in, quiet and undeniable. Outside, cameras flashed. Voices called my name. I shielded my face with the folder still warm from the judge's desk. The world wanted a headline. I just wanted to go home. I walked down the courthouse steps and noticed the sunlight hitting the marble floor. It looked like a clean slate. The wind lifted my hair, and for a moment I forgot how heavy it used to feel. A reporter asked, "Was it worth it?" I said, "Truth always costs, but it pays back in peace." My lawyer smiled faintly beside me. "You did well," she said. I nodded. It didn't feel like victory. Not exactly. More like release. The kind you earn by surviving what should have broken you. At the bottom of the steps, I turned once, just enough to see him standing near the doors, hands in pockets, eyes lowered, talking to no one. Maybe rehearsing excuses, maybe realizing there were none left. The courthouse doors closed behind him with a low thud that sounded final. He refused to look at me when it ended. His things were gone by morning. The drawers slid open like clean mouths, nothing inside but dust and 2 lost buttons. When I touched the counter, the edge felt cool and smooth, proof that his keys were not there, proof that the noise was over. A thin slip of paper lay under the mug we used to share. I lifted it and felt the drag of the fibers against my thumb. The words were small and spaced like a careful lie. I stood a while, listening to the window breeze tug the kitchen curtain. No footsteps above me, no throat clearing in the hallway. Silence sat across from me at the table and did not ask for forgiveness. I boiled water and set out a tea bag. The kettle clicked, simple and steady, and I realized my hands weren't shaking. On the note, he had written, "I never meant to hurt you." It was the same claim he used after locked gates and vanished balances. I pressed the paper flat. "Meaning doesn't fix damage," I said to the empty room. I folded the note and slid it into an envelope with the court order. Not as a memory. As a record. My sister came in without knocking. The door had been left on the latch. She held a paper bag to her chest. "Groceries," she said. "I brought milk, bread, and a small roast." I smiled because the bag looked like hope shaped into dinner. She set it down and pulled me into a hug. I felt her sweater under my cheek and let the tears come. Not the kind that choke, the kind that wash. "Talk to me," she said. I woke up to empty drawers. "Did he leave anything?" "A note," I said. "And the quiet." We made tea. She opened the fridge and frowned at the thin line of food. "I'll help for a bit," she said. "We can split costs until things settle." "I'll manage," I said, and meant it. But I knew her help wasn't pity. It was family. I thought of rent, utilities, and the bill from legal aid still waiting. I thought of how relief carries a price and how I would pay it without flinching. My stakes were simple now. I needed a life I could afford to look at every day. We packed a box with what I wanted to keep. Photo albums, the fountain pen, not for sentiment but to sign new papers, a cheap vase because fresh flowers do not ask questions. I left his cufflinks in the shallow dish by the door. I left the watch that never kept proper time. Some debts are better abandoned than cashed. At noon, the light moved across the floor and landed on the empty drawer again. I slid it closed. "This is my home," I said. The words felt right, like the first set of numbers that finally add up. My sister wiped the counter. "Leave the window open," she said. "Let the place breathe." We ate toast with butter and stood at the sink like we were younger and less bruised. She pointed to the yard. The garden gate stayed open, and the path looked straight, not bent. "You can paint that fence," she said. "Fresh coat, new latch." "I will," I said, piece by piece. My phone buzzed and I glanced at the screen. An email from the power company with a balance due, smaller than the fear I used to carry. A message from the clinic about a part-time front desk job, a text from the advocacy volunteer checking in. Each note was weight, but it was honest weight. I could hold it. We sorted the shelves, filling one box for donations and another for trash. I stopped at the doorway of the study and ran my fingers along the spot where the computer had been. Smooth, pale wood, square and certain. The absence no longer threatened. It informed. "Come stay with me tonight," my sister said. "I want to try the house alone," I said. "Just one night. You can call, any time." "I know." We carried the last bag to the bin and heard the hinge of the empty drawer settle in the quiet behind us. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and stood by the open window. The breeze lifted the curtain again, soft and sure. Outside, a car rolled past and a couple walked by with a paper sack from the corner store. A voice rose on the sidewalk, bright and careless. I heard laughter through the open window. I told my story to a room of strangers. The microphone felt heavier than it should. The cord trailed across the floor, twisting once before it reached the stand. I unfolded my paper and saw the creases from where my hands had clutched it all week. The room was small, maybe 40 chairs, a few still empty. The clock on the far wall read 6:30. People shifted, coughed, waited. I took a breath. "I wasn't supposed to be here," I said. "I was supposed to stay quiet." I almost did. A hum of air from the vent brushed the back of my neck. The sound grounded me. I looked down at the folded paper again and decided not to read. I spoke from memory instead. I used to believe silence was safety. I thought keeping peace meant keeping home. I was wrong. The cost of that peace was me. A few heads nodded. Someone sniffled. I went on. It started with a toast at a family dinner, one that turned out to be the last time I mistook cruelty for charm. From there, it was lies, control, and the slow draining of trust. I lost my money, my voice, and almost my mind. But the truth waited. It always waits. A man in the back raised his hand slightly, not to interrupt, just to steady himself against what I said. I kept talking. When I took back my story, I thought it would end the pain. It didn't. It changed it. Justice doesn't erase. It rewrites. I caught my reflection in the glass of the center's window, older, but clearer. "The court gave me closure," I said, "but healing didn't come from a judge. It came from mornings when I paid my own bills again, from unlocking my door without fear, from saying my name out loud and not whispering it." There was a pause. I could feel the stillness stretch. Then I said, "The truth cost me everything I thought I needed, but it gave me what I'd forgotten I deserved." Someone in the front row whispered, "Yes." The word was small, but it hit like applause before the real one came. When people clapped, it wasn't loud. It was layered. Grief, relief, recognition. I felt it ripple through me. My paper slipped from my hand and fluttered to the floor. I let it go. It had already served its purpose. Afterward, people came up one by one. A woman in her 50s hugged me and said, "You gave me courage." Another handed me a folded tissue, half used, but offered like gold. The organizer smiled. "Would you mind if we shared your transcript with the others?" I nodded. "It's not mine anymore," I said. "It belongs wherever it helps." A man approached next, thin, quiet, with tired eyes. "I'm still living in it," he said. "What you described. I'm not out yet." I told him, "Then start small. Keep a copy of one thing that's yours, something they can't erase." He nodded, gripping his coffee cup like it was a map. The applause had faded, but I could still hear it echoing faintly in the hall. It sounded nothing like pity. It sounded like breath returning to bodies that had forgotten how to draw it. That's when I realized my story wasn't a wound anymore. It was a bridge. I sat down at the back while the next speaker took the stage. My folded paper lay near the microphone, a corner of it marked with a smudge from my thumb. I watched a volunteer collect it, straighten it, and set it on the table beside a stack of other pages. Stories stacked together like proof that survival is contagious. When the event ended, people filed out slowly. I stayed seated, letting the chairs scrape and the lights dim. I could still hear the faint hum from the vent, the sound that had steadied me at the start. The organizer walked past and touched my shoulder gently. "Thank you," she said. "You made a difference tonight." I smiled. So did they. As I gathered my coat, someone brushed past me near the exit. A soft voice said, "You forgot something," and slipped a folded slip of paper into my hand. Someone pressed a note into my hand. Spring returned, and I left it unlocked. The latch hung loose against the post, paint flaking at the edges, dew glinting on the grass below. I took a photo, not for memory, but for proof. Proof that the gate stayed open. Proof that no one controlled its hinge but me. The morning air felt clean, soft against my arms. The smell of wet soil mixed with something faintly sweet from the lilacs by the fence. It was the first scent of spring, the kind that carries both ending and beginning. The garden had grown wild since winter. Shoots pushed through the dirt without permission. I let them. A year ago, I would have trimmed every edge, worried what the neighbors thought. Now the mess looked like life. My new house sat smaller and quieter down the street, a rented space I could afford without checking another account. The rent was steady, the bills predictable, the fridge stocked because of my own paychecks. It was ordinary, and that made it precious. Ruth waved from across the road, her coffee steaming in one hand. "You're up early again," she called. I smiled. "Habit," I said. "Old patterns, new reasons." She laughed. "That's how healing starts." She didn't know the half of it, but maybe she didn't need to. Her voice was enough of a reminder that I wasn't invisible anymore. I sat on the low stone wall by the gate and looked around. The photo I'd just taken glowed faintly on my phone screen. An open gate, sunlight touching the grass, a quiet yard. It didn't look like victory, but it was. I'd signed the address change last week, marked the envelope, and dropped it in the mailbox myself. No lawyer, no witness, just me, sealing my name to a new start. The mailbox had also carried one last letter from him. It was short, unsigned. He wrote, "I'm sorry for how it ended." I didn't reply. The envelope went into a drawer, unburned but unkept. Some stories don't need an echo. I'd already found my ending. Around noon, I watered the plants by the porch. The sunlight shifted through the leaves, catching the edge of a photo frame I'd placed on the windowsill, the one from that night at the anniversary party, before the toast that cracked everything open. For months I couldn't look at it. Now I did, and it felt like watching a stranger trapped in a scene that no longer belonged to me. I stood longer than I expected, then turned the frame face down. It wasn't anger. It was release. The wind picked up, brushing the back of my neck, moving through the gate again. It creaked, not closed but wider still. I whispered, "Stay open." My voice didn't shake. The sound scattered into the yard like a promise. I remembered the last time I sat at that table beside him, pretending everything was fine. The glass in his hand, the lies behind his smile, the laughter that wasn't meant for me. That night, I made a vow to find myself again, even if I had to lose everything to do it. I kept that vow. The cost was heavy, but the return was freedom. The kind no one can sign away. Ruth crossed back toward her driveway and called, "You planning again this year?" I nodded. "Not neat rows," I said. "Just letting things grow." She grinned. "That's the best kind." Then she disappeared inside, leaving her front door open to the air. I leaned against the fence, letting the quiet fill in. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once. A child's bike bell rang. Everyday sounds that meant peace had replaced performance. I reached for the garden gate and pushed it wider, feeling the wood warm under my hand. For a moment, I thought I heard his voice, just a trace, a memory threaded through the breeze, not sharp, not cruel, just distant. I didn't flinch. I smiled instead. Whatever power his name once carried had faded into nothing. It was only a word now, drifting beyond reach. I looked toward the garden, wild and green, and whispered to myself, "I stand alone now." It wasn't pride. It was truth reclaimed, dignity restored, the vow complete. The wind carried his name away. Did you enjoy this story? Tell me which city you're listening from. I read every comment. If the story touched you, you can support the channel with a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this every day. Your encouragement really helps. I'd love to hear your thoughts and what moments stayed with you. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's plenty more on the channel as well. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. See you in the next life story, with respect and gratitude.